Welcome to Academy Live. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Academy Live. Rex is on vacation, so you'll not see him on the show today. But today we'll be talking to some of our partners in a segment called Partners in Business and in Life, married couples who work together. So we'll also be joined soon with Chris Kaiser's wife, Marcy, and they'll break down some stories of the years of working together. On the eve of Valentine's Day, we thought it would be fun to hear stories, gain insight, and advice some of our partners on what it's really like to work together. Studies have shown that there is a lesser chance of burnout when you work with your significant other or partner, which might be surprising to some people, but you have the advantage of integrating your work and home life and have much more energy and resources to invest in both. So very excited to hear from our partners and to hear from Chris and Marcy in a bit. We'll talk about that whole idea of your work, marriage, work-life balance kind of coming together. But before we kick all of that off, we'll start with our quote of the day. So the quote is, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." This is by Helen Keller. I think it really does speak to our topic of today and how we can accomplish a lot when we work together. So without further ado, I would love to bring on Chris and Marcy.
Hi, Bessie.
Hello. So glad you're both in the studio.
Thrilled to be here. Bessie, I'd like to take the opportunity and to introduce Marcy Kaiser, who, yes, as you alluded to, is among many, many other things in her life, my wife. Marcy, we'd love to have you introduce yourself and do what we refer to as a humble brag.
Well, thank you, and I'm really honored to be a guest on the show, so thank you so much with that. As for a humble brag, I was going to introduce C Squared. C Squared started, actually, was your brainchild. It all started as a way to feed the family and put a roof. What?
Pay bills.
Pay bills, those kind of things, especially right after 9/11. And I did not want to have anything to do with it. He was doing it. I was being a mom, working part-time, and really focusing on those kind of things. I didn't love technology, and I didn't know what he was doing. He was just doing a great job by starting the business. That's how it all kind of got started. And I always kind of joke about this. Always be careful what you wish for, because you might get it. I wasn't able to spend as much time. I kind of liked the guy I married, so I wanted to spend more time with him, and it just wasn't happening because he was spending way too much time growing this business. So I volunteered to help the back office and do some invoicing. We'd get to spend more time together. That was 20 years ago.
Now we've spent a lot of time together. A lot.
Sometimes sitting back to back, or sometimes arguing.
Belly to belly.
Was that familiar to you, Marcy? Had you done like that kind of back office work before, or was it something all new to you?
No,
you started to jump in?
It was all new. My degree's in elementary education, but I love numbers, so I figured I could help him out again. He was just busy, and I just really wanted to spend some time with him. The kids were around. We were actually, I think our youngest was 9 months, 10 months old when that was going on.
Gosh.
And then during that time, we also had our fourth, so it was just he was building the business, I was supposed to be building the home, the family, and it just kind of moved from that.
Like the business, I think it just evolved.
Yeah.
It wasn't a vision originally of how you were going to be involved, but it kind of became it wasn't long before you were invaluable. Like it was intrinsic that you were
really
part of the
sweet.
business. Yeah. I still remember handing things off to you.
Oh my God.
I'm sure that was tough for you, Chris.
You know that, like when you relay races, a key part of a race being successful is letting go of the baton when you hand it off.
Can't just keep holding on to
You
it.
know
As
exactly what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
And letting me do it my way.
Oh,
Oh,
so hard.
Ooh.
he would hand off something to me, and sure enough, it's like, well, that's not the way I did it. And I'm like, is it getting done?
Good
It
point.
took, it took a little bit to transition that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, in fairness, it kind of went both ways because I expected dishes to be done and like I expected laundry to be folded and put away. So
Let's stick to the business here.
I expected
Well, we're going to be talking about both today, Chris. I think it's important that we have to bring both sides into the conversation. So,
yeah. So
so tell
was a
us
nice-
more about what happened as the years went on and as your role changed, and how did it change?
So as he was kind of mentioning, I just started with just helping a little bit, but I started becoming more and more important, integral. I started having a voice. I let Chris have the big vision, but I would be more of the integrator, trying to get things to happen and move. And eventually, he did listen to some of the stuff. That whole listening and talking thing was it's an evolution. You always need to work on that.
And I think that are you thirsty? You should have a drink from your mug here.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big boss. Had to throw that
He's
out
the
there.
big boss.
Well, there's always, there's a question, there's a joke about, who really wears the pants? And I think one of the challenges we found early was just kind of, we've heard this a lot, just about establishing what do you do, what are the roles, who's responsible for different things. And the clearer we got, I think we fumbled through a lot of that in the beginning, and it took a while.
Yeah.
There were challenges, but I think eventually the clearer we were with about what you did, your role, what I did, and was what I was accountable for, that made a difference. And there is kind of this magic. There's baggage and there's a downside, but there's also kind of a very. I'll tell the story about the cabinet, the stereo cabinet we built.
Oh.
We've had home improvement projects that have gone exceedingly well. Like we're just in sync and groove and anticipating moves and making decisions and building something together. And then there's other times where
He's got a vision and I cannot see it. I got mud in my eyes.
Back to clear communication being so important.
Right. So there's part of it where you have to plan what the other person is seeing, kind of like the whole finishing somebody's sentence. But if you aren't finishing the right sentence, then you kind of
you're answering a question from 30 minutes ago.
Not as in sync as you're hoping for in that situation.
Yeah, it works well when you're going along, but like building something, whether it's the company, building the family, or building a cabinet, you kind of have to move around some of those and make your way through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
Definitely. Were there any rules that you had in place when you were first getting started or that you developed over time when working together?
Yeah, I think that it was kind of hard in the beginning. So I do remember a very big fight before I entered the business was all about answering the phone. I can't exactly remember what the fight was about, but boy, that was several hours of not talking to one another and dealing with it. But we had to figure out who did pick up the phone, who was going to be the one to answer. You can have any script in the world, but kind of getting those things to move together was a challenge. He was the boss, though, so it's one of those that we kind of had to work away. Like as I stepped in, I didn't want to take something over, so I always had to wait for him to tell me, and that wasn't working either. So we kind of just had to make a few rules about if I was able to go and build it on my own, or if I had questions or something, or he had a vision or something he wanted it a certain way or that angle it, that we had to be able to communicate that. And in the end, he was the boss of the business, so he had to make the decision. So
I'll, and I'll,
that's,
I'll share another rule I think we had to come up with between
Yeah.
us is assumptions are made.
yeah, always.
And sometimes the assumptions are made by employees that because we're married, we're in sync, or that we talk and that we're on the same page. Well, I
Same
told
person.
Marcy I was doing this. Or, I told Chris, like, we kind of had to make a rule of explicit communication.
Yeah.
Another rule that we had to come up with was we both have passion for the business. We both, a strong sense of, wanting to see things accomplished, which can lead to emotions. And one of the things we had to really, one of the things we had to kind of make a rule around was making sure that we didn't bring emotion into the business in a way that was disruptive to the workflow.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Because, if you had something, it could have been brought on by the kids or just a busy schedule, or maybe it was a client thing. You had to make sure that whatever tension or excitement that we had about something, like the kids going to an award show, like, how are we going to maneuver this? And engage with the interaction without making a conflict. Could it be with the employees or the situation when it was going on? So,
Yeah. Close the door, mom and dad are fighting.
yeah, our employees used to say, close the door, mom and dad are fighting. And it was just because we had to have some time to discuss it out and make it out, like the planning of stuff. And as soon as we got through it, we could bring the employees back in and kind of, but while mom and dad were fighting, and they just had a good laugh at it because they knew that it might have nothing to do with the business at the time. It was just what we brought in, but we had to get our vision back together.
And emotions in check.
Yeah, and emotions in check.
Yeah, it was
Both
one of
of
my
us.
questions. Yeah. Well, that was one of my questions I was going to ask you was about separating work and home life. It sounds like there is definitely that emotional separation. Did you also work physically in the same place? I know that you have an office across the street from you. How does all of that work?
So we've evolved over time with the business. We actually even moved homes partway through it in the beginning, and we moved into a business location and all of this stuff. So we've had a lot of evolutions. At times, and I think at the very beginning, we shared an office. I didn't love the office. I did not like spending any time in it. Again, that was a challenge. So we moved it where I got to be with the sunshine and just where more of the action was, and it was a lot better for me. Eventually, we shared a space where we sat back to back with one another. And then eventually we got office space where Chris would go in on a regular basis. I ended up only going in part-time. I still liked the balance between family life and working, so I didn't mind working later at night or doing things outside of the regular schedule, so that way I could still participate with family stuff and kid stuff that happened during the day. And it was a balance we kind of worked out. So he would be at the office, and I would only come in
As needed.
as needed.
You did most of your work from a home office. And I think that I feel very blessed and fortunate that I had the opportunity to be at all the kids, field trips and be involved in their life. So we had some of that flexibility.
Yeah.
But there was also the give and take of us both being up late at night, knowing something had to get done, and that was the time would do it. it's hard, I think, because so much of your conversation, talking to other, talking to our partners, talking, peer groups and the communities with the partners we serve, there's a lot of, same kind of stories expressed about it's hard to separate, That's why I love the work-life harmony, and it's not, it's really hard to turn it off, and I really respect those too, but being able to separate out and have time for the relationship, as a husband and wife, or as family, father, mother, sons and daughters, away from the business. It's just a bigger challenge, I think, when it's so integral to who you are and your identity.
Yeah, and that was part of the working around each other, but it was also one of the rewards of working with him, being able to. Again, my goal was to be a mom. I achieved the goal, and now, as some might know, I'm also a grandma. That was what I really wanted. I still got to be this business person, being able to build and learn about all of that right in line with being a mom. So I've always enjoyed it. I found it as a blessing. And Chris also was able to, build this vision he had of the business, and at the same time still be a dad.
Oh, I love that. And I do. I have more. I've got some more questions too around that. We'll have one more question before we go to our some views from our partners. But you mentioned your kids. I know you've got 4 of them. Can you tell me just a little bit about their reactions to the business? I know now some of them work in the business. Can you share a little bit about that too for our listeners?
You know what? Our kids have just been blended into the business, in that when we first started out, at least I was working out of the house, and our kids kind of just learned that mom and dad, we joke about, that was how mom and dad made money, and like when it was take your kids to work day, they literally got to stay from home. And they would understand that we closed the doors. We have these doors, French doors to the office. When I closed them, it meant that I was probably going on an important phone call, and they needed to be quiet and behave. No yelling, no fighting. Boy, if I got done with that call and I had heard anything, they were going to be doing chores for a long time. So they kind of just learned part of the business was who we were and who the family was, so they were always a part of it.
And I feel bad. We actually told them, and there were times we felt bad that they made sacrifices of giving up their home space because of having the business there. When we grew and got office space and moved out, but they were always included. Like we'd take them to the office, take them to events, take them to client sites, things like that. So it was just important, I think, that they knew what we did and were included in that.
Oh, and I got little rewards. I have to tell you, the Social Security Administration needs you to fill out a great big long form when you pay a 5-year-old because he was doing stuff at the business and helping out.
Setting him up for financially.
Let's move to the next. Let's move to the next topic.
Excellent. Yeah, let's hear from some more partners about what it's like to work together and be in a relationship together. So let's hear the first ones.
Partners in business
and in life.
I think some of the advice that I could offer to somebody starting out in this type of environment is I think it was very important for us to define what roles we were going to fill within the organization and try not to cross the boundary. It's very difficult when you don't have those roles defined and everybody's trying, both parties are trying to do everything and not agreeing on some things. So being able to set those boundaries of the roles and define them well, that's probably a good piece of advice.
There's plenty of times where the accountant has called him and he's like, I don't know why you're calling me. I have no clue. Call Melissa. So it's, we both have our things that we do, and and we kind of stick to that, and we don't tread on the others.
Probably the funniest story that I could share with us working together is, I'm more involved in a lot of the networking events locally and some of the charity events and things like that. And Melissa's always been very apprehensive of joining us for these galas and things like that. She's like, I'm not going to know anybody. And then we'll show up regardless of what the event is, and she'll end up knowing more people than I do. And, we talk, I didn't know Melissa was your wife. And that's usually what happens. And it's kind of funny when we run into that because, there's a lot of people that she knows that, I had never known prior to.
I thought you were going to talk about the April story. So we had one of these contacts that he has. He introduced me to this woman, and she looked at him and she goes, "Oh, she is too good for you. How did you get that?" And I went, "Well, And he goes, "I don't know, but I must be doing something right." So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a charity that now she's more involved in with than I am. And when we show up together at events that she sees us, she's always pushing me out of the way to get to Melissa. And I think the biggest reaction that I see when people find out that we work together is, do you work together or one of you the boss? So we are a Maryland-based, cyber-focused managed service provider. Maryland is a unique state where they've got a tax credit for cybersecurity-related products and services. So we're very focused on offering unique funding opportunities for businesses with less than 50 employees secure their business. So we do full service, everything from basic entry-level help desk to security-focused risk assessments with myself as the principal.
I am the office administrator, although I wear all kinds of different hats. I do all of our back-end accounting, bookkeeping, and HR, as well as office administrator, so to speak.
She will probably end up getting transitioned into the role of controller since she's so controlling.
Hey.
I work as the CEO and handle sales and culture in the company, as well as overall vision. And Shelly does operations and marketing and has my back. And together we make a great team.
It hasn't always been that way. In the beginning, we brought both of our strengths to the company when we decided to start it. And so that was something that we had to figure out who was going to do what. And it was something that was a lot of fun, a lot of arguments, and we learned a lot about each other. We made a stronger company because of it.
And a stronger marriage.
Yeah, that too. I think the one that we both remember vividly, like it was yesterday, even though it was probably 20-some years ago.
We call it the sticky note incident.
Yeah. When we first started our business in our home, and we had a year-and-a-half-old twins and a 5-year-old daughter at the time. There was a lot of stress. And we were figuring each other out and how to work in business together.
And in the same room.
And in the same room, God help us. And our desks were near each other. And so we got in a big argument about what would be best from a business perspective, how to market the company, or we don't even remember the exact reason. We just got really mad at each other, and it was just us. We did not have employees at that time, and we ended up turning our backs to each other and going back to work and just not speaking. So the room was cold. No one spoke except for pounding on the keys.
You could definitely hear the keyboards pounding.
I was so mad. And then
it was silent.
Yes. And our marriage has always been about don't hold a fight or a grudge more than 20 minutes. Don't go to bed mad. So at one point in time, I was still mad, but it didn't matter. I was still sorry we were arguing. So I put a big yellow sticky on the back of my head and said I was sorry and kept working like nothing was going on.
And it got really quiet because the keyboard stopped, pounding so hard, and she wasn't talking and I wasn't talking. And all of a sudden I turned around to the side and all I saw was a big old sticky note on the back of her head that said, "I'm sorry." And of course, we all started
still laugh about. We need to still laugh about it because it really taught us to bring humor into, and we laugh at each other and ourselves a lot. Helps us keep our ego out of it and be focused on what we need to do best for the company and our marriage. What's the lesson you've learned?
You have to do everything you can to keep business and personal separate. So I think we have different lessons with us, between us. For me, it's really that there's a bunch of different entities that you have to maintain and nurture and separate. So, you might have heard in marriage, they say there's three entities. There's the husband, there's a wife, and then there's a marriage. Well, when you add a business into it, it also adds the husband's responsibility in the business, the wife's responsibility in the business, and the business. So now there's 6 different entities to manage. The more we have been able to separate the personal from the business side, the marriage from the business side, the better. And on days where we don't separate them so well or they cross over, it's not a great day. So you have to, you really have to work on that, or we have to work on that hard to create the boundaries and say, I remember we went on one of our first vacations after the business has started, and we said the rule was you can't talk about kids and you can't talk about the business.
I'm like, what are we going to talk about?
You looked at her like, what are we going to talk about? Yeah, it's
Like, that's why we're going on a vacation.
a chance for us to reconnect with each other, ourselves, and the marriage. So that's probably the biggest thing. Set up some boundaries so that you have a cutoff time, or you have days or times where this is no business talk. For us, it was no business, and with 3 kids, it was no business and 3 kids. So we had to talk about us as a marriage. And
Reading boundaries were always, it's a challenge daily.
it's hard to come home and be done with the business when both of you work in it, because there's always something in someone's mind to discuss. So for us, the more we can do that, the better. And was that your lesson too?
I think, yes, definitely. But I think another lesson was leave the egos out of it. We all have egos, and I think we both really worked hard on learning a lot about how we operate, what our programs are, what triggers us, so that we could be healthy together in our healthy conflict, not hitting below the belt. And there would be days where we would find somebody else had a better idea. So we had to let go of our egos and honor that for the business and our marriage. We had a joke about if ever it was figured out, okay, you were wrong. Instead of me saying you were wrong, the job was he got to go in the backyard and yell at the top of his lungs, I was wrong, or vice versa. So that was kind of our humility, I think, and being humble.
Yeah, I think we woke the neighbors up a few times.
I was wrong. We laugh. I mean, it's just our kids got to see that. So it made it, because we're both super passionate. So it made it more okay if we got an argument, as long as the other person went in the backyard and said they were wrong.
Well, there was a time when you had some personal things going on with some friends, and you stepped out of the business for almost 5 years, and then I had to beg her to come back. There's also another time where it wasn't best for the company for me to be in the president CEO role, and I was demoted to CTO while someone else took the reins.
I was the face of the company, and he worked on the technical side, and now we've swapped. And so it's kind of like figuring out. It's also great as a couple and an individual, because you get to learn all different parts of the business, though never for me technical.
Yeah. But that goes back to what I was saying about there being so many different entities when you work together. The marriage has to be the strong foundation base, in my humble opinion, and that's nurturing each individual, themselves and the other, and vice versa, and then the marriage itself. But then also honoring and acknowledging the great work that each one does in the business, and know that those roles might change because there's no ego, but what's better for the business. So there's, that would be the biggest advice. It is to figure out how to nurture and develop each one of those entities separately, and I would say, keep your egos out, because you're doing it for the better of your family, you're doing it for the better of the business.
Aw. Wait, they can't see it.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Aw.
I love the story
Oh,
of
you
the
like the
sticky notes.
That was really sweet. I know that we've had many moments where maybe sticky notes is a new communication tool. I forgive you.
I'm sorry. Um, a couple of things that stick out is I love how they talked about there's so many roles. I came in as, the president or founder or the visionary. I came in as the husband. I came in as a father. I came in as a technician. I came in as a man. There's so many roles we play. And I think same,
Yeah.
wife, mother, offspring, all the roles you play in the business, and keeping in mind the differences. And like David said, the marriage being the foundation and having a strong foundation. I know there were times that I had to remind myself, I'm speaking to you as the office manager or the operations, director of operations versus, my wife, and tempering the messaging, the words, the conversation differently according to that, and remembering my roles. And the other thing was expectations. Melissa and Ron, I love that about, you take things on, but I remember there were times I expected different things of you than what I think you thought that I expected.
Yeah.
And that's something I hear a lot from partners too, is just, well, she should be doing this or he should be doing that. And they're not in agreement with what that looks like.
And it's so much the same even at home. You hear couples anywhere talk about, well, I shouldn't have to tell him to do something. He should just know. Well, the same thing happened in business where you would just assume that this was probably more in my area, but it wasn't directly told. Somebody had to do it. Nobody was picking it up, so it was just assumed I was going to do it. And it was really hard to say, like, all right, back to where we're going. You can't hold me accountable for something that wasn't going to,
Yeah, but you don't have, and also what you don't have authority, or responsibility for, but you're accountable. I think we made big strides, and I see a lot of people in the groups, I think, find more success in their relationship and their business when they set the expectations clearly, explicitly out loud. They communicate it with each other, they write it down, and they know this is what it looks like. You're going to take on these things, and you're going to deliver these things. I'm going to be responsible and accountable for these things.
Yeah, because when it starts, that whole thing about assuming, it makes a mess of everything.
That's a G version of that.
Hey, I was always around the kids.
Elementary ed. Okay, it's all clear to me now, yeah.
But, with the communication, and we've talked about when we had employees and stuff, talk about language. I forgot. Sometimes I would, because I was so used to calling you Dad in front of the kids, that I'd be like, hey, Dad, what do you think about this idea? And then I'd be like, oh, man.
Yeah, it seems weird.
It did.
That really brought people into the mom and dad are fighting.
Well, that was part of it.
Just,
And part of it was we did have, at the time, one of our kids was working for us. So I think when they were in the room, it was how we addressed each and it was everywhere, because my daughter would address me as mom, and occasionally I'd have to remind everybody that I'm answering this question as the operations person, or if we need to take a break, we can go talk mother-daughter, and it would just make it a lot easier to know what role am I sitting in when I'm answering this question.
Which hat do I have on right now?
Yeah.
yeah.
And one thing that it was, I think, Ron and Melissa were talking about how going to all these events together, and they were talking more about volunteer events. But I know that you are both involved in different MSP community events and different programs. You travel together to conferences. Can you share a little bit about what you're involved in and what it's like when you're there together, as a couple, as a partnership, as a working together? Can you share a little bit about that?
You know, in the beginning, again, Chris was the visionary, the boss, all of those, and it's shifted. So it's kind of interesting to see the change in all of it. I think originally I really was seen as the wife, or always as just the assistant, or those like just. I really wasn't a part of the company. I was just a tag along. But over the years, that's definitely changed. I've taken on such a leadership role in some of the user groups, and just gone to conferences on my own, and people recognize me for who I am. And that's been amazing, but it was a shift, because I think in the beginning, people did see me for the wife, or the plus one when you have some of those events, when you have a guest pass. I was the guest pass. So I think that's changed.
But I think that evolved as you became more involved in the communities. You volunteered for meetings, you contributed, you asked questions. It became apparent that you were not just along the side, you were fully in the business and engaged. And I think your involvement kind of led to, we'd go to places, people would recognize you. And it's amazing how many times people would go, "Oh, you two are together?"
Yeah, we never sit next to each other.
Divide and conquer.
We
get so much more done together. Divide and conquer.
So we go to conferences. We'd never go to the same sessions. We'd come back and talk about everything on the flight home.
What did you experience?
Yeah.
What did I hear?
So we tried to become individuals in whatever role we were focusing on, so that way we could bring back more about to the business. And you know what? That also goes a little bit with the home. Everybody always knew me as whatever kid's name, mom or so-and-so dad. I didn't have my own name. And we just kind of eventually get to the part where I am my own person. And I remember a trip that we took. It was just Chris and I. We left the kids home and everything. And we were traveling on this train. We're about 2 or 3 days into this vacation.
And before you get to the punchline, I think just to kind of preface it, saying it is important to remember the roles and connection. You get so involved in the work, in the business, and the roles you play at work that sometimes you forget to keep those personal connections of your relationship. So this was a powerful moment.
So we'd been building the business for several years, and we took our first break. Vacation. We went over to Europe. Somebody around here might love soccer, so just got a little bit of soccer involvement. But we were on the train to go to go at a game, and I looked over, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I know who you are. You're the guy I fell in love with. I haven't seen you in like 2 years, even though we were together." But it was like the first time we'd been just being our own person, having a lot of fun, and we really were enjoying that, and not having to be worried about the business
work and the roles of those things.
Yeah.
And I know she meant it, because she got it in her eyes got big, and she looked at me very, and she said, "I like you."
But after all the time working together, sometimes you have to take those breaks.
Yeah, I think that's important too. We heard from our partners the importance of taking vacation, not talking about work or the kids, and making sure you have those other things that you are keeping in mind, and that you're staying to yourself, right, and your relationship. Well, we have a few more partners to hear from, so let's hear from our next set of partners, and then we'll come back together.
Hi, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Sherry,
We work together.
and we're married. Working together is hard work. It has its ups and its downs, but it is worth it when you are both committed to your same vision and goal, and you're both behind it. But yes, we've had plenty of conversations, though, of why are we doing this and things like that. But we've also seen the blessing of doing it and being in it together. Before I got married, I did work for another company, and there were days that I felt like there was more challenges because we were kind of going in two different directions. I had commitments going one way, yet Nathan had commitments going this way with his business. So when we decided that I needed to leave that and be together with doing this together, that was actually helpful, I think, on all fronts, actually. So family and business.
Yeah, it definitely does make a difference. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. As you know, the majority of businesses that are started fail within a fairly short period of time. And I've been doing this since '98, which means I guess that somehow I've managed to outlast that statistic. But at the end of the day, yes, sometimes it means that it's hard, but sometimes it means that it's rewarding. Like, for example, this right now, we're sitting here at a Pax8 conference that we're going to together, and it's great to be together for the next 3 days and be able to see all of our friends and peers from around the area. And so yeah, it definitely has its highlights as well. So
We're partners in business and life. It's kind of crazy, it's kind of fun, but we're in it together.
That's right.
You can be really successful in business, but not necessarily happy on the personal side, and so we try to keep those both balanced. And sometimes that's utilizing coaches or therapists on the personal side as well as on the business side. When you run your own business, you don't always know what you don't know, and so we try to tap into resources, people around us that are smarter than us, because we can't figure it out all ourselves.
Shout out to Rich at Pax8 Academy.
Thank you, Rich. We love you. Fun plugging is a challenge sometimes. Where in the evenings, sometimes over dinner, we're chatting about, oh, hey, did you do that thing? Oh, what happened with that situation? Stuff like that. And so it is really challenging to unplug from the business. Back a bit ago when our daughter was 3, we sat down to dinner one day, and she asked about one of our clients by name. How's this client doing? And I was like, we need to not talk about clients over dinner. This is, we have some boundary issues here.
But something I heard at a conference a couple of years ago, I loved it, was there is no such thing as work-life balance. There is just life. And it's like sometimes we have business conversations at 9 o'clock at night as we're getting ready for bed. Sometimes we have dinner, conversations over dinner. But then sometimes during the day when we would normally be working, like, we have flexibility to do, it's just life, right? Like, if I need to go grab the kids and take 3 or 4 hours during the middle of the day, it's my choice. I can do that. And that's a big part of why we did this. And I feel like it's a good education for our kids to some extent. Like learning like what it takes to do, like to provide the life that they have. So
Sometimes
we do a weekly, we actually just started doing weekly weekly evaluations, not of the employees, but of our week with each other, and like the employees engage in that as well. Because it helps, we want to fix problems before they become big, right? And so like, that's a big part of why you do therapy before you need it, right? That's a big, there's a lot of, it's preventative maintenance. Like, isn't that what an MSP is all about? Is proactive, preventative maintenance for clients, so that way you're never facing emergencies. Well, so much of us maintaining our relationship with ourselves and, with each other and with our employees is checking in before it becomes an issue and trying to course correct like day of issue rather than 6 months later. Personally, I've learned to adjust my language quite a bit. So like when I'm talking with anyone, she's always my partner in the company. She's never my wife. Not that she isn't obviously both, but I feel like it lends a lot more respect and credence right off the bat, because it is ours. It's not mine or hers. It's something we're equally invested into. So I don't know, I've said to be really careful in how I use language, because it really changes how people perceive things. Do everything with the best interest of the other person at heart. And then assume that's how they are doing everything towards you. Like, I have to remind myself to consistently be like, everything that I do has to be in the best interest of my partner. And so that means making sure the deals I sell are better and less messy. I have to am I leaving a mess behind every time I do anything? It's not just I'm gonna go out and sell things. I have to be thoughtful and have the best interest of my person in mind.
You have to be willing to be respectful and be respectful of your person. And sometimes in personal relationships, we don't have quite as much professional respect. And so for us, it helps to kind of have a clear division. I try to keep personal and try to, I can't come into the office mad at you because you didn't empty the trash. I have to take off my wife hat and put on my partner hat, and as much as possible keep that apart. We can take up the empty trash conversation when we get home, but I can't be snarling at you in front of our employees and creating that kind of a culture. You have to be able to mentally separate that, or if you can learn how to do that, that's really helpful. It is definitely an adjustment, and that's part of the reason why we've been doing this for 13, 14 years together now.
This is 13.
It's been a few minutes. And we have definitely learned a lot, and we can look back and see periods of time that period of time was a little bit rough, and we tend to handle that by going, we have been bumping into this issue over and over. Clearly, we are not solving this on our own. Do we have a trusted advisor that we can go to and say, we're having some trouble here? Ultimately, our goal is to have a successful business, but also to have a happy marriage.
That was so great. I really loved how they were talking about their the language they use and how they talk about a partner versus wife, especially if someone they don't know. I thought that was really interesting.
That's a great point, and I love that they kind of express that, because we've experienced that firsthand. But I think I hear that a lot with other partners, that sometimes in the business they're seen as the spouse. And I know there were times when it's like, oh, that's just Chris's wife. And they didn't recognize the role you played in the business.
But I think that you have definitely made sure the language was always that of a partner or of my role. And so much so that as you've transitioned onto Pax8, you've now allowed me to take over the running of the business. So all of that has shifted, and it's pretty powerful for me, because now, again, back to, we're still in a partnership together, we're still in a marriage together, and we're building stuff, but we're just building it in such a different way, and our language is powerful. And how we present each other on even in our new roles, our new future together, that we're still building this business together as partners.
It's very validating.
Yeah. That you entrusted me with this. I'm really proud of you.
I love that. We have a few questions in the chat we want to pull up. So let's take a look at what those are. Okay. The first one, make it a bit bigger for me. Printing. All right. I can't make it any bigger. Um. Oh, it. I can't see it. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you, Marcy. Is Chris always so serious at home?
Oh my God. The personality cannot be pulled out of Chris. His personality is always. But you know what? I always wanted to marry somebody who made me laugh, so I definitely found the right person.
You're the first person that meant that.
I love it. Let's see the other one. Okay. How do you keep the business separate from the relationship?
I think that harmony we talk about, I don't believe that balance is the right answer. I really believe that we can blend the two. We do talk about dinner, over the dinner table, we might talk a little bit about business, but it's because we're allowing everybody to talk about their day. And that's what our day is, and vice versa, that we can talk about family. If there's an event that happens during the day while the business is going on, we can still communicate that. So to me, it's the harmony, making sure that we take care of what's the most highest priority, the biggest that we have to deal with. So it's a harmony.
And I know some people do a good job of making it much more black and white, like setting time. And I think it's finding what works for you.
Yeah.
And what's critical is just making sure that you are, it's like plants, you're watering and nurturing
Yeah, very much.
both sides, the plants that are your personal, your spousal relationship and responsibilities, and the business ones. And for us, I think we've made it work because it does blend, and we just try to maintain that harmony and equality, and knowing, okay, you know what, you're full. Let's get a break from that. Let's focus over here for a little bit. Let's take some time and get away.
Well, we're wrapping up, so I want to give Marcy a chance. Is there any other lessons that we didn't cover? Anything that you wanted to share? Any last thoughts to leave us with?
My biggest thought is just when it comes to any partnership, to make sure that you listen to one another, be respectful, be kindful, because your goal is always to grow the business or grow the relationship. So the best way to do that is, kind of like somebody said earlier, get the egos out of the way and make sure that you're focusing on where you're headed.
I love it.
I think
Chris, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that it can be a big challenge, but I think it is a big blessing for those that have the opportunity to work together, because there's a lot to tap into with the relationship and the connection and the passion and the drive to the common goals.
Yeah.
That when you can focus on the good aspects of it, it can be a very powerful thing to tap into.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show together. Let's hear sales pitch from Keith, and we'll wrap up.
Play ball! What does your team do to attract and land new business? What are some of the things that you're doing to build familiarity in your business community? Is there a specific prospecting plan that you have? And by following that plan, new opportunities are coming along and your pipeline's being filled. In any sport, teams are always looking for new players, always looking to improve their team year over year, either going through a trade or free agency, which is basically there's a player without a contract and they go to sign them, or through a draft where they have young talent that comes up. The reason they do this is because eventually they may lose some of their good players to age, retirement, stuff like that. So they're always looking for new talent. If they don't do that, they will struggle. So what's this have to do with sales? In sales, we're looking to grow year over year. We're looking as a business to grow our company year over year. We're looking for new clients we want to add. No matter what you do, as great as you are, you're going to have client turnover. So some prerequisites you should know, first and foremost, is one, who is your client? Who's an ideal prospect for you? And also, what problems do you solve for them? 2 or 3 of them, specifically in the industry if you can. So those are some prerequisites. So let's touch all the bases and figure out some ways to help you recruit some new clients. 1, coffee meetings with centers of influence. People that you know, people that you trust, people that know and trust yourself, who are doing business with your ideal prospect. And they can introduce you to them. 2, networking. Fishing where the fish are. Going where your ideal prospects go. If it's an industry, going there. If it's business owners, going to some sort of executive group. 3, webinars that your prospects care about. Not talking about your tools and having some sort of webinar about secrets of cybersecurity protection. They don't care about that. They don't care about your tools. Maybe something spin on that. Pitfalls of cybersecurity insurance for construction companies. You'll attract construction companies by a title. Make it your own. 4, public speaking events where you can present thought leadership in your business community. Doing like we did with the webinars, going and talking to them about where they are. So build relationships with your prospects. Have them think of you as that thought leader. Don't look at sales as a cadence. Sales is a skill. Building relationships, attracting people to you, having them call you because you've built a know, like, and trust relationship. So that way, you're always recruiting new prospects.
Thank you so much, Keith, for that amazing sales pitch. I know we're all learning a lot every week with sales pitches. I especially want to thank all of our guests that came on the show, the couples that pre-recorded together, gave us their time. Thank you to Marcy for coming on the show. It's always great to see you. I know that my fiance, Matt, is really happy everyone was able to attend so he wouldn't have to be on the show. And I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day tomorrow. So thank you all so much for watching. Next week, we'll be back on Academy Live with Sarah Eric. She'll be talking about how to prepare for your first hire, all the things to think about from HR to how you're going to be a manager and everything in between. So make sure to tune in next week. We're live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain and on demand always. Just remember, think about what are you going to do differently tomorrow. That's it. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Like and
Thank you.
subscribe.